The one which is, I would say, salient is competition. We see quite a lot of people have a need for that. Now, competition could be, let's say, one company to another company. So if you're in a competitive market, people then will easily have that need fulfilled.
Hello, I'm Mark Jackson. I'm the host of the New HR, and today we have Mattias Hallberg, who is an experienced CTO and Director of Research and Development for Attune business. Mattias has a strong background in IT, software development. He specializes in building high-performance technical teams and managing cultural differences. Mattias holds certifications in machine learning, project management, Scrum, and ITIL Foundation. Attune helps companies build happier and more productive workplaces through science-backed data and AI, uncovering deep and actionable insights on what their employees need to be more engaged with and fulfilled at work. Hello, nice to see you.
Oh, thanks, Mark. Nice.
So let's dive right in. It's been a while we've been trying to arrange the call. So can you just share a few things just about your background and what's brought you to where you are today?
Certainly, yeah. I've been working for many different sizes of companies and also different industries, heavy machinery, advertising, a bit of startup in automotive industry, etc. And during that, I've been doing research as well, both in Sweden and in Japan. So, it's been quite a long time. I've been in Japan, totally about 25 years now, working for different corporations. So I've seen quite a lot, seen a lot of different teams, a lot of different management structures. And I think to me, the big learning has been to really focus on the people and understanding you as a manager, what you can do for them, not trying to go to the command and control style, but more of a humble listener. So I think that is really what I can see has been successful. And that's really, I think, the reason why I also started working for Attune, because they really are focusing in this niche market to really, really deeply understand people and make the workplace much better than currently.
I like that term, humble listener.
Yes.
That's a good term. So what is Attune and who's getting the most value from it?
Right. I think the value actually could be for anyone in the organization. To begin with, we have an onboarding assessment. It's just 10 minutes where the respondent will explain what matters to them. It's a questionnaire. It takes about 10 minutes. And after that, they will have a list of their top priorities, like motivators, and they can read also about what type of job environment that they will thrive in, and potentially job environments that they will struggle in. So they will certainly understand more about themselves. Next, the manager will look at each employee's report and understand how they can work with them much better, so understanding them deeply. And members also will understand their peers. So if you're working on let's say a project or in a team setting, it's often that you have to work with people that you might not get along with. And sometimes that's puzzling to you. Why is that happening? Why, this skilled person and me, why can't we get along? So I think that insight, the mutual awareness, is another great value that anyone can get. And last but not least, the top management. They will look at the whole organization, understanding also not just the motivational side, but also engagement. So assessing work engagement is really, I think, it's a corporate need to understand the productivity in the organization and how much more can we essentially get out of the workforce, how much latent power is there. And that is, of course, important when it comes to budgeting and hiring and anything. So I think anyone at any level will find value using Attune.
It's interesting. Would you say when people are onboarded I know this is anecdotally, but generally speaking, do you think people have a good, awareness of exactly how they like to work? Like people may say, I don't like to work with a micromanaging boss, or, I like to be independent, but just from a 360 view, do people really have a good sense of how they like to work, what type of teams they like to work on? Or is this, is this a bit of a realization when they go through the process?
Yeah, I think it's quite common that you have a bit of a realization. It's a bit of a discovery. So I think the most important thing normally is known to you. For instance, if you feel autonomous, you would know that autonomy is a top one. It's not maybe a surprise. But sometimes the bottom ones, that could be quite interesting. Like, what is lowest on my list of priorities? And that also would speak to them. Like, why would I have, for instance, security as my bottom one? So I don't really care about processes. Rules, regulations are there, but not really for me to make myself feel more comfortable. So I think both will kind of teach them the top and the bottom.
And when they're working with the people that they may not necessarily like initially, how does the platform, when you're on a team, does it share the other working personalities, so you have a sense of who you're working with?
So we don't really it's not a personality test, similar to MBTI and those. So we're really focusing on what matters to people, and it's not about the behavior. So it's more of your top priorities, which could be very useful. For instance, if you have a decision to make in a team, and some people will be maybe focusing on uncovering the logic behind the decision, like looking at the data and making sense of it. Other people are more creative, and they think, well, let's just try, let's just do it. What's the problem? What's holding you back? So that is the typical conflict that will happen. So those two people, one being more innovative and one being more logical, by understanding each other's different motivators, they can then overcome that. So they have to negotiate and agree on the course of action instead of just pushing for their own things, which is very, very common. And actually, I think it also happens without being conscious about it. It's a natural state to push for your things. You think that's the right way, and you don't really recognize the other person's way of doing things.
So obviously people over a period of time, they change, sometimes quickly, sometimes over a prolonged period of time, getting married, buying a home, having your first child or something of that nature.
Right.
Does the platform, is there like regular check-ins, or do you redo the entire onboarding process on a regular basis, or how do you?
That's a great question. So we do pulse surveys, which is a monthly kind of check-in, see if you have satisfaction regarding your motivators. And regarding the change part, so we do, I would say yearly is a good frequency. We do retakes, and then you can look at what has changed from 1 year to another, and you can ask yourself, why does it happen? I think COVID brought about a lot of changes in people's lives, and we saw on a global scale, really what changed in each market. It was kind of interesting. There was, of course, depending on the market, there were different changes, but we might have assumed that, let's say, social relationships would have been going up just because people had less interaction. That might have happened in some markets, but not in all markets. So people are affected differently by external factors, but certainly there is change. You mentioned getting a child, things like that, your family situation changes. That will maybe hit, let's say, the financial needs a bit. So you want to have more stability in your life because you're now supporting your child. So that needs to be recognized by the employer that things changed, and now we need to be a bit more careful, let's say, goal settings or career paths, etc. That would just have to change.
Okay. How can you explain a little bit about how Attune uses data to uncover deep insights, just beyond the questions itself? How does it go beyond that and get deeper insights about employee motivation and needs?
Right. So basically we have a ranking structure so that everyone will have questions about all the available motivators, and you will rank them against each other, so that you will have a list of what matters to you, and also we compare with other people, so you will understand what percentile you are in. That gives us a pretty good map of a person and how they relate to other persons and how they also relate to a group of persons. And particularly with a manager, which is often a conflict, social conflict. The manager might just move forward and using their management style without recognizing that they have a kind of a blind spot. So we're really uncovering those details and presenting that to managers so that they will be aware and cognizant about that and pay attention to it when they interact with people. So it's a lot of data in there that we need to make sense of, and also that's also what we're using AI, which maybe is another type deep question for you to ask, but I can maybe continue on that one because I think it's really connected.
Sure, go. Just keep going, and anything you want to share on the AI side.
Right. So essentially, we are able to measure work engagement because we have collected data on that in the past. So we know there's a very complicated link between intrinsic motivation and work engagement. It's difficult because what matters to people, as I said, is different. So it's hard just to have like a if-then type of case, logically speaking. That's where we need AI. AI will make sense of data that's really difficult to interpret. So that's what we have it. So basically, the pulse survey will explain your satisfaction for different motivators, and that will then be input into the AI, and AI will tell if you are engaged or not engaged. So that's how we kind of look at that big set of data and make sense of it.
Earlier, just you were talking about blind spots.
Yeah.
And, obviously you think about, I guess the employee base first in terms of blind spots, in terms of how they're working and their perception and engagement. But can you talk a little bit about management blind spots in terms of really, because obviously they're going through the same process and the same learnings, and I imagine the same, epiphanies in terms of their own work style and blind spots. Can you share a little bit about how that might impact management and any data or feedback you have on that?
Let's say a manager that, you of course have managers as well. So any type of relationship like that, I think my point will be valid. So for instance, if you think of a person who is very motivated by feedback, they need feedback to know if they're on the right path. They need actually both negative and positive to kind of stay on track. But another, let's say the manager of that person are not at all motivated by it. So they won't pay attention. Now, if an employee or a manager working for another manager is not getting that need fulfilled, they might feel left out. So they might feel like no one is really caring for them. There's no reconnection, no feedback loop going on. So they might even look for a new job because of that. They think that all this effort is wasted. That no one recognizes my achievement and why am I here? So I think in management that's a very, very common thing, that you don't know, you don't need something and then you don't pay attention what other people need. So that could easily be fixed by recognizing that. And next time you have a one-on-one, you just look at that tip and tell yourself, all right, I will give this person now some feedback, honest feedback, but definitely I won't forget it, which normally is well received, and people sometimes get surprised, like, oh, really? Thank you. It's good. I didn't expect that from you, because so far they never got anything. So I think that's kind of a key to pay attention to those gaps in your management, day-to-day management of staff, and just ensure that you really do that. You don't forget it.
Yeah, definitely one size does not fit all. So having those little cues and almost like a little cheat sheet cue card in terms of, how to best engage with each individual employee one-on-one would be powerful. You have, I believe you have 11 key motivational factors that affect people in workplaces in your system. Can you expand on any of these factors, the top three, or any that you want to talk about today that are powerful?
Yeah. The one which is, I would say, salient is competition. We see quite a lot of people have a need for that. Now, competition could be, let's say, one company to another company. So if you're in a competitive market, people then will easily have that need fulfilled. But if you're not in a competitive market, what type of competition can you offer? Would that be between people, or is it more setting a challenging target and let everyone, try their best to hit it? Or would you just display where people are so they know, okay, I know where I am, and like a leaderboard, right? So in many ways of doing that. I think that's a very, very common one that we see a lot. Another thing is, globally speaking, we have social relationships. It could be autonomy, but also quite strong, depending on the culture. Otherwise, I would say innovation is very much a key to many research organizations. It could be coders. They need to have that creative environment. Otherwise, they really don't feel that they have fun. They can express themselves. And also progress to make it very clear that you are moving forward. That's another quite important one for research organizations or like development. But sales, I would say, typically competition will be one of the most important things to always try to get that deal closed, working with different customers, try to get quotations sent out. All of those things are quite important for them. If you let's say you're in a hiring mode and you try to find salespeople to hire, and you have them take the assessment and they score extremely low on competition, I think it's really good to ask the candidate, so regarding competition, how do you feel about that? If the answer comes back saying, well, I just want to take it easy and focus on my own thing, sit in my cubicle, maybe that guy is not good for a sales position. So I think rather than screening, you can probably come up with a few good questions to ask them and uncover that before they're hired. So I think, certainly, depending on what you do, certain motivators kind of pop. And focusing on that as part of the role when hiring or when replacing people in different teams will give you some extra insights. So I think that's it's a good rule of thumb for managers to look at those when they hire and place people in teams.
Can you share some effective ways to motivate teams and keep them engaged, especially during challenging times?
Right. I think it comes back to what matters to people. So it's I think any type of crisis situation, normally people go back to their own values. Like they really look at again, kind of, I feel like a broken record, but what matters to them is quite important, right? So let's say the top three, that's something that they will focus on. So you as a manager, when things get really tough, people are likely to gravitate towards that, and that will just happen naturally. So if you had a great team spirit before, that might be disrupted because people are now not interested in those other things. They just want to care about the top ones. So knowing that, I think you are in a good situation to deal with whatever is coming. And for instance, the feedback part, you might need to do more of that if a person is very much motivated by it. Or let's say security, like procedures, etc. Maybe they've been affected by whatever happened. So people having a great need of that, they will feel very much insecure, right? So how do you fix that? Well, you might have to sit down and clarify this to them that things aren't that chaotic. After all, we have rules, and then you'll come back to me if you have any question regarding what's happening now. Depending on those external factors, there will be changes happening, and you just need to think of those changes. How will they affect the motivators? What can I do as a manager to ensure that they still are satisfied on that level?
Okay, that's great. The one that popped into my mind initially, definitely in the past 2 years, is probably index your communication level higher. Obviously, you'll have tweaks by each individual, but you probably would index a little bit towards over communicating when people are insecure and going through a challenging time. How about cultural differences? They can certainly be a challenge. How do you approach this aspect when building high performance technical teams?
I would bring in another concept, which is psychological safety, to be reassured that all nationalities will have the right to speak up and not be criticized for that. So I think the so-called Western culture is quite, okay to speak up, even to point out errors when they feel there's a need. But other cultures, now been in Asia for quite a long time, I see that many people are holding back. And if you mix these people in the same team, it's likely that the Asian people will be very quiet, not speak up, and the Western people will just speak all the time. So you can't let them, hijack meetings. You need to facilitate that and ensure that the environment is psychologically safe, and that takes time. So you have to build trust, so that if they do speak up, you be very careful about that low voice, and you need to make that voice grow. So over time, they feel no hesitation speaking up. So I think the balance of who's talking the most and being able to bring in those people silent into the discussion is key, and be very careful about not pointing in errors. Typically the psychologically unsafe way of doing management that should be avoided at all costs.
Yeah, even across cultural lines, it's generally the extroverts that are probably the loudest in the meeting room and can suck up all the oxygen. And like you said, there's probably a lot of really good feedback, some gold in those people that are just silently sitting there.
Right. Just because they're holding back, it doesn't mean that they don't know anything. So
yeah. Actually, they probably are better listeners in many ways and probably have more to add.
Right.
But they're waiting for the person to pause, and quite often those extroverts just don't pause. They just keep going.
So typically I use this open and close technique, typical facilitation. So like, okay, Lisa, now you've been talking for 5 minutes straight. Let's have some other person that can come in here and see what he thinks. So you do the closing and then opening, and naturally they will kind of understand okay, now I got my cue. I understand I was talking too much. Sorry. All right, here we go. Go, Ken.
That's great. That's a great tip. What role would you say does machine learning play in understanding and addressing team motivation in the workplace? Yeah,
I think the relationship between the different data points is quite tricky. So we need machine learning to make those predictions clear. There could be many type of data points we get from an organization, and we can try to correlate that with some type of outcome. Let's say turnover, the risk of someone leaving, right? If you have the data over the years, who's been leaving the company, and also you have other type of data for motivation, engagement, and these things. Maybe could be things like how much overtime, sick days, of course, gender, and so on, age groups. All of those data will be having some type of effect on that outcome. But how to make sense of it is really tricky. But machine learning can just do that in a sense by itself, because you can train a system. You feed it the inputs and you say, well, that was the output I wanted. Now do that again with a new input that I won't tell you the output. So you just train it up. And if you have enough data, then you get pretty high accuracy. So I think that's really a brilliant way of making sense of data that you just couldn't do before. You would not be able to accurately predict something because Excel, etc., just couldn't do it. So I think it really could help people to make sense of the data.
That's great. Can you share a story, perhaps, of where Attune solutions made a significant impact on team motivation throughout an organization?
Right. We have a customer called Alphas. It's a startup, and they have teams spread across the globe, technical startup. And they were really curious, what is the different culture? Well, the differences between the teams and locations. Because, of course, you have communication. It's almost like a 360, follow the sun type of development. And if you don't have good communication, then it just won't work. And to know really what matters to people, they needed Attune. So it's played a very important part in their development process, the HR, to understand that. And they are much, much more communicative, because you can then use that information wisely. Another company, they were looking for making a new incentive program. But incentive programs could be quite costly. So what should you focus on? What's the, let's say, key driver? And specifically, they had knowledge about intrinsic motivation, so they wanted to know, how can we leverage that? How can we make people motivated by these incentives? So by using Attune, they would know that before launching the program, so that it could be much more effective. So it's kind of a tailor-made solution that was built on top of the knowledge delivered by Attune.
Okay, that's great. Obviously, you're serving up a lot of data on individual employees to people that are using your system. Are there specific, like, do you have a weighting system? Like, are there specific metrics or indicators that an HR manager should focus on to assess and improve team motivation effectively, or do you serve that up?
Yeah, we call that the motivation satisfaction. So it's essentially those different motivators, how much of it am I getting, and how much over time also. So it's a time series that you can look at. And for instance, in HR organization, if they're looking at, let's pick financial needs, they might have that responsibility. So if they look at a trend, like what's happening with that. Actually, the company I mentioned, Alphas, they were looking at this particular motivator, and they saw that it was dropping. It was dropping months and months. That people were less satisfied with it. And being a development organization, they know that people are likely to jump ship if they're not paid fairly. So they quickly made adjustments, and they saw that it was picking up again. And they saved those people that might have left. So I think those KPIs are really good to look at each of those and see the fulfillment. And it's also effective use of your funds, because it isn't guesswork. You don't have to try something and see if it works, but you have that data. You know it's not working right now, so you can do something about it without that guesswork.
Yeah, interesting. I guess it's just kind of one of my wrap-up questions. It's kind of a big one. From your perspective, what does the future of work look like? And how can companies prepare for it?
Right. I think, I guess this podcast wouldn't be doing a good job unless we also talked a bit about ChatGPT and those tools, because they are really affecting organizations, and it's very much an AI thing. So looking at that, like how is that affecting people, AI generally speaking? I think that type of tool, of course, is going to improve a lot of workplaces, increase efficiency, but you won't quite understand your needs. You will understand a task, what to do, but still that part, I think the relationship between humans is something is very difficult to copy. And I think that part will continue to be very important, that the more people are, the knowledge workers particularly, are working, say, from home or a type of hybrid model, you need quickly to understand how to communicate with people. There's no time to waste. And maybe also because of these tools now, that things that used to take a week Now you can experiment, you can pivot a new idea in hours. So people are requested to speed up. But if you're speeding up too much without knowing where you're heading, you're going to crash, right? So I think we're going to see a lot of conflicts at the workplace unless people pay attention to those interpersonal relationships. Okay,
that's great. Good feedback for sure. ChatGPT is definitely interesting. It's out there and everybody is experiencing, but it's been around for a while. I was talking to a platform yesterday, and they had the foundations of ChatGPT kind of under the covers for the last 8 years.
Well, yeah, that's a long time.
I had no idea, but obviously it's kind of out there and exposed to all of us, and we can test it and do all kinds of interesting things with it. Well, thanks very much for your time. Much appreciated. I appreciate your thoughts and input in terms of how to make work more successful with teams. Where can people learn more about you and get in touch? We'll include some links as well in the show notes.
I will encourage people to reach out on LinkedIn. Gladly make a connection there. And otherwise, sometimes I join podcasts like this, great one. So that's one way of listening to what I have to say. Otherwise, we do publish blog posts on our website, so you can read some of them as well.
That's great. Well, thanks, Mattias. And thanks very much for your time. And then wrapping up, just for all the kids out there that are old or young or building the next SaaS platform in the basement, and especially saying to all to my kids, stay curious, everyone. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.